live from the new sports betting capital of the world.
You might be from Texas, but I'm from New Jersey.
Benny Ricciardi is here to break down the day's betting board for you.
Let's go, Jerry. Go!
Taking a first look at the day's bets, it's time for the FTN Betting Show.
Welcome to the FTN Betscast for Thursday, August 4th here at FTN Bets and sponsored by our friends over at Sleeper. Sleeper is the fastest growing fantasy platform today with millions of players, and now you can win on Sleeper by playing in their new over-under game too. It's easy to play. So first, in any sport, you're going to choose two or more players that you like and then pick whether they're going to go over or under their listed totals. So for example, tonight in baseball, it could be something like the number of hits a guy gets, maybe the number of runs he scores, the number of strikeouts that a pitcher has. And then you're going to choose an amount of money that you want to enter into the contest. And if you pick correctly, you win anywhere from 2 times your money all the way up to 20 times your money if you go 5 out of 5 and get them all correct. But the main reason I'm excited about this over-under game on Sleeper is that it's the only app where I can join with my buddies and we could all play together. It has this built-in group chat where I can see what you're playing, you can see what I'm playing, and we could all see what the guy who's won 3 days in a row is playing. And it's insanely fun when everybody in the group is riding it out together and rooting for the same things to happen. So stop what you're doing now, download the Sleeper app to play in the new over-under game, have some fun with your friends, and make a little bit of money in the process. On your mobile phone, you can join our listener group on Sleeper by going to sleeper.com/FTNBets, and Sleeper will even automatically match your first deposit up to $100 if you join through that link. Again, go to the bottom of this description of the podcast, sleeper.com/FTNBets, and you'll get a $100 match on your first deposit. There are terms and conditions that apply, so see Sleeper's terms of use for those details. Today, we're going to wrap up the preview of the NFC North with the sports betting numbers that we're going to see out there. And the one team that we have left to talk about here is going to be the Chicago Bears. Last year, the Bears were 6-11. Jeff Ratcliffe on our FTN Bets win total prediction model has the Bears predicted for 6.3 wins this year, which is pretty much in line with what we're seeing on a lot of the sports books. So the consensus number out there in the market for the win total for the Chicago Bears is 6.5 wins, which again is a little bit higher than we have it, but it's also juiced way up. You can get this as high as plus 125 for over 6.5 wins on the Chicago Bears. DraftKings and FanDuel both have it at that plus 125 number right there. The under is the more likely to hit one, and that's what a lot of the sports bettors and books are saying as well. It's as high as minus 145, which is almost a 60% probability that the Bears come in under 6.5 wins here this year. FanDuel, PointsBet, BetMGM all have under 6.5 wins at that minus 145 number if you're looking to get down on it. Probably a little higher of a number than I would like to see. If it was in like the minus 125, minus 130 range, then I think it's a good bet here. At minus 145, I'm not saying it's a bad bet, but there's probably not a lot of value in there. I think the number is exactly where it should be there. If anything, I would rather play the over at plus 125 because I think that's a little bit juiced up there. But again, I don't have a great feeling about the Chicago Bears being a great team this year, winning 7, 8, 9 games. So the more likely thing to happen is that it's going to come in under. I just don't think we're getting paid well enough to take it at minus 145. Next thing we can talk about, will the Bears make the playoffs? The best number I could find on yes, the Bears will make the playoffs is on DraftKings. DraftKings has this at plus 450 for the Bears to make the playoffs. Most of the other books out there have this sitting between 350 and 400. So again, not a massive difference between most of the books in the consensus number and what DraftKings is offering. But if you are going to play, yes, the Bears to make the playoffs, you want to take the best number. And the best number is at DraftKings at plus 450. Will the Bears make the playoffs? No. This one is 500 to 650, minus 500 to minus 650 on most of the sites out there, which is like an 80% chance, 85% chance even that the Bears are not going to make the playoffs. But you can get it as low as minus 450 on BetMGM, which is interesting because DraftKings has yes at plus 450. MGM has no at minus 450. So there's basically no juice if you look at those two books together and you put them together. You can bet 450 over at MGM, and if they don't make the playoffs, you win $100, and you can bet $100 over at DraftKings, and if they do make the playoffs, you win 450. So you could basically break even on both sides of that. Now, why do I mention that? Because that's not always the way it is in the market. A lot of times there's a little bit of a takeout, a little bit of what we call a hold in the industry, a little bit of a hold, and that's how the books make their money. So anytime you can get something that's an even money bet, again, not that it's even money where it's plus 100, but where you're getting a payout on one side that's equal to what the payout would be or how much you would have to lay to get that money back on the other side. It's always interesting when there's a no hold market out there. So this is definitely something you guys should bet on. If you believe in the Bears, take the yes. If you're like me and you don't believe in the Bears, I think that minus 450 number on BetMGM is a little bit too low. Like I said, everybody else minus 500, minus 650. So it is a lot higher on other sites right now. So you can get a pretty good deal on no, the Bears will not make the playoffs on BetMGM. So I like that minus 450 number there on BetMGM. That's something that I do think is worth us putting some money on and making a wager. So no, the Bears will not make the playoffs, minus 450, BetMGM. Go over and get your money down there right now. And remember, if you guys are looking to get some of these deposit bonuses and things that these sites are offering as well, get over to www.ftnbets.com/sportsbooks. On that page, I compile the list of all of the sports books that are available that we partner with in the United States that do online gaming. And it has the best bonus for each one of those sports books listed there. So whatever you're looking to do, if you don't have an account yet at one of those sports books, take advantage of this free money that they're offering. It's not going to last forever. But right now, if they're going to give you a free $1,000 bet, or they're going to double your deposit, or give you free bets in the amount of your first deposit, or whatever the deal is that these books are offering, now's the time to take advantage of that stuff, because you want to have that money, you want to have that ammo in your clip for when the NFL season does actually start. And then this way you can fire and, make some bets that you want to make. And the easiest way, I tell people all the time, the easiest way to be a profitable sports bettor is betting with other people's money. So if the books is going to give you free money for you to bet with it, build a bankroll off of their money. And then this way, even if you have a bad week or two and you lose some money back, you're basically paying them with their own money anyway. So definitely make sure you guys go out there and take advantage of it. That's my public service announcement for the day. You can get that sportsbook link down in the description of this podcast as well. So now let's move on and talk about the chance for the Bears to win some trophies this year. And I got to be honest, and I'm sorry, Bears fans, I'm just a messenger. Don't get mad at me, but the numbers are not very good for that. So let's start with the NFC North. The Bears are the shortest or the longest priced team to win the NFC North. They are plus 1,400, 14-1 on DraftKings is the best price we can get on the Bears to win the NFC North. Again, Green Bay is the favorite. Minnesota is a little bit behind them, deservingly so. And then there's a big gap back to the Detroit Lions, who are sitting at like 9 or 10-1, depending on what book you're looking at there. And then there's another gap back to the Chicago Bears, who are anywhere from 12-1 to 14-1, with DraftKings having it plus 1,400, 14-1, being the best payout you can get on the Bears to win the NFC North there. I don't think it's a very high likelihood. I am not going to be putting any money on the Bears to win any kind of trophies this year, but I did want to mention the numbers for you in case you guys do have some interest in it. So the next one would be the Bears to win the NFC, 70-1, plus 7,000 for the Bears to win the NFC. DraftKings and Caesars has that number. Every other book is at 60-1 or below. I think the low might be somewhere around 45-1. But again, if you're looking for the best number, you think the Bears can win the NFC and be the NFC representative in the Super Bowl this year, 70-1 is the payout you're getting on it over there. It's about a 1.3, 1.4% chance that that's going to happen. DraftKings and Caesars, the best number on that one. Bears to win the Super Bowl, 150-1, plus 15,000. DraftKings, PointsBet, Caesars all have it at that, 150-1 number right there for the Bears to win the Super Bowl. Again, I don't think they can win the North. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. I definitely don't think they're going to win the NFC. So for me to take them to win the Super Bowl, I feel like I'd just be lighting money on fire. But again, it's 150-1. If you're a Bears fan, you want to get a little bit of action down on there. That's the best price. DraftKings, PointsBet, Caesars all have it at 150-1. It's 100-1 to 125-1 on the other books out there. So again, if you're going to make this bet, which I do not recommend, make sure you're doing it on DraftKings, PointsBet, or Caesars, because at least you're getting the best payout over there if it does happen. So that about wraps it up for the team stuff. Let's talk about some of the player props here for the Chicago Bears. There's three guys I want to talk about here, and we'll start with the quarterback, Justin Fields. I'm not going to talk about any of the MVP odds or the Offensive Player of the Year award or any of that stuff with Fields, because I don't think those are realistic things that he could win. So whatever the number is there, it's probably not high enough to get us interested in it. So let's just avoid talking about it and wasting any money on it altogether. There are some interesting numbers, though, that I did want to talk about here for Fields. 3,350 yards passing. The over on this is plus 115 on DraftKings. The under is minus 135. Now, remember, with these season-long props, and I say this every show, but I'm doing it because I'm trying to nail it into everybody's head so they understand it here. More than 2/3 of these tend to end up to the under. Probably, it might even be over 70% if you looked at last year, the way that it worked out, but it's somewhere in that range, over 2/3. So, your first instinct should always be to bet the under. That on everything. If somebody says, hey, what do you like about this season long? Under should always be your first instinct. We have to absolutely love something if we're going to take an over on it. And I got to be honest, I don't really love anything here on the Chicago Bears. There are a couple things that we'll talk about that I think maybe are worth mentioning and are interesting, but there's really not a lot I want to take here in terms of overs. So 3,350 yards for Fields. Over is paying plus 115 on DraftKings. So it is a nice payout if you want to take him to throw for, 3,351 yards or more. The under is minus 135. DraftKings also has the best price on the under there. This is available on a couple other sites, but DraftKings has the best price to the over and the under on this one here. So I don't know. I mean, when you look at it with Fields, 33,350 yards and the 17-game season is less than 200 yards a game. So that at least is interesting. You're going to think that he has to take a big step forward this year. Well, we know that he has to take a big step forward this year, right? So how big a step forward does he take? He doesn't have to take a massive step forward to get over this number. He just has to take a small step forward. And he has to remain healthy throughout the season. So, again, I can see a path for him getting there. But at the end of the day, I mean, this was not a very good offense last year. They did not put up a lot of yards through the air. Again, maybe they're better this year. You got another year under the belt for a young quarterback. You got the weapons that are, in place and ready that he played with mostly last year. I don't know. I mean, as you can see, I'm struggling to even make a case for it, which is why taking the over here is not something I'm really looking to do. So I like the under minus 135 on DraftKings. I think it's a little bit of a high price there. Like if it was minus 115, I'd be a lot more interested. But that is the probable place that it's going to cash if you're interested in taking that number. Passing touchdowns. Now, this is one of the overs where I don't think it's all that crazy. Passing touchdowns, 18.5 passing touchdowns is all they're asking for Fields. And that seems like a really low number to me. If this guy's going to be starter and he's able to stay healthy and play all 17 games, I mean, you really only need what? That's like 1.1 touchdowns per game. I don't think that is a massively big ask for a quarterback here. If he has even one game where, they're trailing and he has to chuck it around and he throws for 3 touchdowns or so, then he basically just has to average 1 touchdown in every other game he plays this year in order to get it over there. And again, even if I don't love this passing game, that's not asking too much here. So I think that 18.5 number is very interesting. And the other reason I like it, DraftKings has over 18.5 passing touchdowns at even money. FanDuel has it at minus 112. BetMGM has it at minus 115. So to be able to get this number at even money over on DraftKings, I think it's a pretty good deal. So I do like the over. This is one of the few overs that I would actually take. I do like the over on 18.5 passing touchdowns for Fields this year. Again, mostly because of the price and the fact that that's just a really low number. That's a number I haven't projected. I don't have him projected for a ton. It's not like I think the guy's going to throw for 40, but I haven't projected for a number in the low 20s. So over 18.5, he could even miss a game or two and probably still get this. So that is something that we like. We like when we have a little margin of error. I like the over on Fields passing touchdowns. The under on that, if you want to play the under on 18.5, the best price you can get there is FanDuel has it at minus 112. Again, I like the over, but if you want to take the under, FanDuel has it at minus 112. I just think that number is too low to be messing with an under on it. So I'm staying away from any unders when you have a touchdown number that low for a guy projected to be a starter for 17 games. So let's see. The next number for him, though, also one that's interesting. Number of interceptions Fields will throw, 14.5 interceptions. I kind of like the over there. I like the over on that number. It's minus 110 on DraftKings to the over and the under. Again, if he stays healthy, this is the kind of quarterback that I talked about. When you have like a rookie quarterback or a young quarterback who's been given the keys to the kingdom and the team understands there's going to be some growing pains with him and they want him to get some experience because they're really looking for him to be ready to be a solid contributor and a solid quarterback, maybe 2 or 3 years down the line when they get the rest of the pieces around them. I think that's the kind of situation that Fields is in this year. I don't think he's going to get benched because he is the quarterback, quote unquote, the quarterback of the future for this team. So they want him out there. They want him taking his lumps. They want him going through those growing pains. And that's the kind of guy that we always talk about. If you're going to bet overs on interceptions, you're going to bet a guy to be the guy who throws the most interceptions in the NFL. that's what you want. You don't want it to be a guy like Marcus Mariota, right? Where they have a rookie quarterback sitting behind them and he's kind of just a placekeeper there. If Mariota goes out and throws 15 interceptions in the first 10 games of the season, guess what? He's probably going to be on the bench and they're going to see what they have in the rookie there. The same thing with any other veteran in the league whose job is a little shaky. You could be like, oh yeah, that guy's horrible. Mitch Trubisky, another good option there. Oh yeah, Mitch Trubisky, he's going to lead the league in interceptions. He's going to throw 50 interceptions this year. They're never going to let a guy like that get close to 50 because they have another guy waiting in the wings behind them. So what you want to look for is who's a guy that the team is going to let roll out there for the entire season, let him take his lumps, good, bad, or otherwise, and kind of see where it goes. And what I always say to people when we talk about this is, remember, Peyton Manning as a rookie led the league in interceptions. Why did he lead the league in interceptions? Because he was the guy who they gave the keys of the kingdom to. And they said, you know what? We're going to have him go out there. We're going to have him learn. We're going to have him trial by fire, and he's going to make his mistakes, and we're going to live with them because that's what you do when you have a young quarterback. Those are the kind of guys that fall into this, lead the league in interceptions or throw 15, 16 interceptions. And Fields, I think, falls into that category this year. So this is one of those guys I would be willing to take an over on, and also take a little bit of a flyer on him to be the guy who throws the most interceptions in the NFL this year. You could get Fields at 10-1 to be the guy that throws the most interceptions. DraftKings and MGM both have it at that 10-1 number. I wouldn't mind putting a little bit of money there. I actually like putting the money there more than I like putting it on the over 14.5, just because of the payout, right? Like if you're throwing 15 or 16 interceptions to cash that over on 14.5, he's probably close to being the league leader in interceptions. So I'd rather take the chance of getting the 10-1 payout there with the money that I'm putting in. So most interceptions in the league, 10-1, Justin Fields, definitely something that I'd be looking at there. So now let's move on and talk about the running back position. David Montgomery. I keep hearing people, and I've heard this now for a couple years. Last year, it was Tyreek Cohen. And, every year it's like, oh, well, they're going to limit David Montgomery's carries and they're going to limit his touches and all that stuff. But it never really happens, right? Like every year, he's still the guy. As long as he's healthy, he's the guy for the Chicago Bears. He's going to get more carries. He's going to get more touches. He's kind of their best offensive weapon, although Darnell Mooney has kind of come into his own a little bit last year. We'll talk about him in a minute too, but let's stick with Montgomery here for now. A couple interesting numbers for him. The rushing yardage total for him is 875.5. FanDuel has the lowest number there at 875.5, and it's a good payout on FanDuel too. It's minus 112 to bet the over. So if you want to go over on David Montgomery rushing yards, 875.5 on FanDuel, minus 112, that's the place to go with the over there. If you want to go under, the highest number out there is PointsBet at 930.5 yards to the over and the under. They have it minus 115 to the over, minus 115 to the under too. So if you want to play the under, go to PointsBet, 930.5 yards on PointsBet. Under is paying minus 115. So that's the best number you can get on the under for David Montgomery. I don't know. I mean, a healthy David Montgomery to me should be able to get over 900 yards. Again, so I guess I shade to the over there, but that's assuming that he stays healthy. Again, 2/3 of these tend to go under. So my first thought is always under unless I love something. And I don't love David Montgomery. It's not like I have him projected for 1,400 yards and his number is 900. You know what I mean? So, if you're going to bet anything here, like I said, you want to bet the over, FanDuel minus 112, 875. You want to bet the under, PointsBet 930, minus 115. If I had to choose, I'd probably be on the under rather than the over, but I didn't put any money on either side of this one here with Montgomery. Did want to throw out one other number out there for Montgomery, 6.5 touchdowns over on FanDuel, minus 112 to the over and the under there. I think it's a good number here too. And this is one of those things where I'm like, hey, listen, we don't have to bet every number that's thrown out there, right? I think this is a solid number. I think he's going to be the goal line back. I think he's going to have some chance to break one or two big ones. Could even get a couple in the passing game out of the backfield. Whenever you have a running quarterback, it always makes things a little easier, opens up a couple more lanes for the, for the running back when you have a running quarterback. So, there are some positives here for David Montgomery this year. I just don't like this Bears offense, so I'm not really trying to put a lot of my hard-earned dollars invested into any kind of overs here and leave it on there for, 17 weeks. Because remember, if you're really wrong on one of these season-long things, that just sits in your, your current bets for a good 17 weeks of the season. You just get mad about it every time you look at it. So I try to avoid things that I don't want to think about, and I don't want to think about the Chicago Bears offense. So let's go to the next thing and the last thing I want to talk about here, and that is that wide receiver that we mentioned in Darnell Mooney. Man, this is such a polarizing one for me, right? It's because Mooney came on pretty strong last year with Allen Robinson out most of the year. He was like the number one wide receiver in Chicago. He's a guy that's going pretty high in a lot of season-long drafts and best ball drafts and things along those lines. And I think the best ball drafting of Darnell Mooney is really the way to go about doing it, because he will have some spike weeks, but he's also going to have just some bad weeks because of an overall bad offense and bad passing game that he's playing in here. For the season-long numbers, if you want to play an over, BetMGM is the best place to play the over. It's 74.5 receptions on him. The over is minus 105 on BetMGM. That's a lot of catches. 75 catches is a lot of catches. That means that this is going to be a guy that gets what, like 4.5, 5 catches per game, which means just based on, the accuracy and stuff of Fields, he's going to have to see like 9, 10 targets a game in order to get over this. And maybe he does. He did it a couple times last year. But man, it's asking a lot. He'd have to stay healthy. He'd have to be just a target monster. He'd have to catch a lot of those targets as well. It's just, I don't know. I just don't see how Darnell Mooney winds up being a stud here. And maybe he is this year. Like I said, maybe he is as good as everybody is expecting him to be. Maybe he does take that step forward. But I just think there are other things that I like better than messing with this. And again, if he has a good year, he could easily go over 75. I just don't know enough. I just don't trust it enough with this offense for me to put any money on it here. So again, this is another one I'm avoiding. I don't really think it's the best way to play Darnell Mooney. I think the best way to play Darnell Mooney is actually to play his receiving touchdowns. And normally receiving touchdowns is not the way I play a guy, because receiving touchdowns is kind of variable, right? Touchdowns is a variable thing. There are guys that caught 80 balls last year and only had 1 touchdown. There are other guys who caught 30 balls and scored 4 or 5. Mooney, I expect to be somewhere between like 60 and 80 balls this year. In that case, he should be somewhere between like 4 and 6 touchdowns, which is around where the number is. The consensus number is 5.5, but FanDuel already bumped it down to only 4.5. And the over on that 4.5 number is minus 122. 5.5 on DraftKings, 5.5 on BetMGM. The over is minus 130. So you're telling me I could get it at 1 less touchdown at 4.5 and a better price at minus 122? Absolutely, that's the place I'm going to go. So FanDuel over 4.5, minus 122, the best place to play Darnell Mooney's touchdown number, because you're getting it at a lower number and a better payout, even though it is a lower number. Normally, you would expect it to be like, again, if DraftKings and MGM have it at 5.5, minus 130 for the over, and FanDuel had it at 4.5, you would expect that to be like minus 150 or so, minus 145. For it to be minus 122, the better number and the lower number, it just doesn't make sense. So if you're going to bet an over, which I think is the best bet here, Darnell Mooney, FanDuel, over 4.5 touchdowns, minus 122 price. That is the best way to play Darnell Mooney, I think. That's the number that appears to be off the most to me, and the one where I think we get the most value on. If you did want to play the under on that 5.5 touchdown number, you can get it at even money. DraftKings and MGM have the under 5.5 touchdowns at even money over there, which again feels like it's really off to me, but I like the over 4.5 on FanDuel the most. That would be the place to play it. Although if you're anti Darnell Mooney, get over to DraftKings and MGM. You can get that plus 100 for the under. And then the last thing for Mooney that we're going to talk about is going to be his yardage number. So if you want to play the over, the lowest yardage number is actually on DraftKings right now at 950.5 yards. The highest number is on PointsBet at 960.5. So again, not really a massive difference between these, but if you're going to play an over, you want the lower number. If you're going to play an under, you want the higher number. So DraftKings at the low at 950, PointsBet at the high at 960. DraftKings payout for an over is minus 105 to go over 950 yards. I mean, I think in a perfect situation, Darnell Mooney can be 1,000-yard receiver this year. But do I think that is the most likely outcome or the average outcome for him? No, I think it's one of the maybe top 25 to top 30% outcomes for him. I think the most likely outcome is somewhere between 800 and 900 yards. So maybe a little bit below what they're expecting from him here. So I actually like the under better. So I went over to PointsBet. You can get the under on PointsBet is minus 115 at 960.5 yards. So that would be the way that I would play it over there. I took a little bit of money on that one. And then my big bet was actually Darnell Mooney over 4.5 touchdowns, because I do think he's going to be a touchdown threat for this team. Not only, breaking stuff and going to the house with it, but also a deep threat for this team as well. he had some very big, very eye-opening games last year that made people understand that this guy actually can play. Like I said, the thing I don't trust is the quarterback play here. And you really need good quarterback play in the NFL if you're going to trust any of these receivers. So, like I said, those are the ways that I could look at and play Darnell Mooney. So this wasn't the longest podcast we've ever done here because there isn't a ton of stuff to talk about here with the Chicago Bears. They're not likely to win any awards this year. The numbers aren't all that great for their win total. It's kind of priced to perfection there. Some of the individual player props are not really all that great here, but we want to make sure we go team by team and give you guys all the best options. So those are the best options that I saw. Remember, right now you can get over to FTN Fantasy if you're looking for help in those season-long fantasy football drafts that you have with your friends. FTN Daily if you're looking to play on DraftKings, FanDuel, and PrizePicks, or FTN Bets if you're looking to hear more information like the information we're throwing out here for you today and get some of those bonus monies from some of the sports books. Now, use promo code Benny. You could save 20% off a package at FTN Fantasy, FTN Daily, or FTN Dailies, or FTN Bets. So whatever you're looking to do this football season, you're looking for the best information, the charts, the graphs, all the expert analysis, everything else that we got going on, and not just for football too. It also goes to baseball, MMA, NHL and NBA when those seasons roll around. We got tennis action. We got soccer coverage coming up with the World Cup. So lots of things going on over at the FTN Network brand. So definitely go over there and check it out. And remember to go down to the description in this podcast. Click on that link to get into the sleeper contest as well. Get that free $100 deposit bonus match and go over there and make some money. Have some fun with your friends. So for Benny Ricciardi, signing off for today's FTN Betscast. Good luck, everybody.
Live from the new sports betting capital of the world.
You might be from Texas, but I'm from New Jersey.